Ukraine's drones strike deep in Russian territory, and this could be a turning point, especially when it comes to showing Russia's vulnerability. Before we continue, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the notification bell for more news. Ukraine's drone strikes on two air bases deep in Russia mark a new chapter in this war, but it's unclear whether it will escalate the conflict or turn the tide of the war. Everything depends on the reactions of Moscow and Kyiv in the coming days. In the meantime, it's worth considering some possibilities, but whatever the outcome, we'll discuss the aftermath of these strikes first. The attack follows days of massive Russian air and missile attacks on civilian targets in Ukraine, mainly power plants, with heat and power outages, as the country's winter intensifies. These strikes were carried out by the Russians from airfields and then attacked by the Ukrainians. In previous wars, Russia has enjoyed an asymmetrical advantage. Planes and missiles launched from Russia attacked Ukrainian targets, but Ukraine did not retaliate, fearing this would escalate the conflict. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky sent a clear message to Russian President Vladimir Putin in Monday's drone strike. At the same time, Zelensky always adhered to high moral principles. It did not react to Russian attacks on civilian targets, but he only attacked military bases on which Russia launched attacks. It should also be noted that Ukraine used Soviet-era drones to carry out these attacks, not US or NATO weaponry. President Biden and other Western leaders have steadfastly refrained from direct intervention in the war, keeping their troops and pilots out of action and launching missiles with enough range to hit Russia. The US-supplied rocket launchers have been modified so that they cannot. Until now, it was ambiguous whether this restriction also applies to Ukrainian weapons. In a sense, this was an abstract limitation, because the Ukrainians had little or no ammunition of such range to strike deep into Russia. However, Ukraine recently modified some of its Soviet-era drones to fly such long distances. One of the bases attacked was 300 miles from the Ukrainian border. After completing this task, they saw two of them. And the next day they shot another base. Ukraine therefore declared that the ambiguity should be resolved. The West may have banned Ukraine from attacking Russian territory with Western weapons, but not with its own. In some ways, the Ukrainian airstrikes were symbolic. Air-based damage has little effect on the progress of the war. In April 2017, then-President Trump launched 59 of his cruise missiles at a Syrian air base after Syrian President Assad used chemical weapons against his own people. Within 24 hours, Syrian pilots took off from the same airbase and dropped several more bombs, although they were regular ones this time, on more civilians. But this symbolism is powerful in a concrete sense. It showed Russia to be even more vulnerable than many in Russia, Ukraine and the rest of the world thought. Several Russian Tupolev 160 and Tupolev 95 strategic nuclear bombers were stationed at the affected airbase. Some of these bombers are used to bomb Ukraine with conventional cruise missiles. You would think such a base would be particularly safe. Last week, Northrop Grumman and the U.S. Air Force each unveiled the new B-21 bomber, a high-tech stealth aircraft worth $750 million. Bomber, albeit quite advanced. But a slow, low-flying Soviet-era drone flew 300 miles deep into Russia, where he damaged two Russian bombers at two of the most important military bases. Now a new question should be asked about the need for the B-21. Faced with such embarrassment, Putin could not sit still and do anything, and he did not. Unleash a wave of powerful attacks. But it was qualitatively no different from what he had already done. If he does nothing else, either greatly increasing the volume of attacks or punishing Ukraine in some other way, he basically has a military at least. We are telling Ukraine that we can hit more targets. The risk here is that Russian citizens will feel something they have not yet felt during the 9 months of this war. It's a personal concern. One of the air bases Ukraine attacked on Monday was just 100 miles from